YB stays on your neck.
He's on my neck.
I think they should have a rematch. Anthony Joshua can wait. He doesn't want any of those guys. When he's seen that fight, he's like, wow, these guys can box, and now they're going to do it again. He's at one place in his career and in boxing, so obviously he can make the decisions that he can make, and his decision is not to fight any of them at this moment. I think.
Now, you made the jump from the UK over to the States, something that Joshua hasn't done. Would you advise him to do that early on in his career and get that over with? Because it's a huge market that he's missing out on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll come over here quite now. I think he's too happy in England being protected. I mean, I don't think he'll come over here quite now. I think he's too happy in England being protected and boxing in front of the British crowd.
Yo, my dons, make sure you hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and obviously hit the bell for notifications. Interestingly enough, Lennox Lewis has actually responded to the question of whether or not he is an Anthony Joshua hater. So let's take it from the top. This dude called Travis J must have some sort of podcast. And you see here, he says, so we had a discussion on whether or not Lennox the Hater Lewis was an AJ hater on the last episode of their podcast. So that's what he says. They had a discussion on their podcast, and Lennox Lewis has actually replied to their podcast with this. He says, thank you for being objective, etc, etc, etc. And now he actually writes down the criticisms that people have given to him and his actual response. So the first one is, he addresses the jealousy narrative and the crab in a barrel mentality. So let's take it from the top. The jealousy narrative is the crab in a barrel mentality and is a very small-minded way of thinking. This is not my way of living or thinking. My entire team was an international team that consisted of Brits, Canadians, Jamaicans and Americans. If you spend your life comparing your success to another and being envious of their success, then you will never get out of the barrel. You will spend your lifetime climbing and falling back down instead of climbing and turning around and helping to pull someone else out. B. I've accomplished all the goals I've set for myself in boxing. What's interesting with this narrative of jealousy is that my career is over and my record is cemented, and I'm in multiple Hall of Fames. The narrative of jealousy is not even logical. Now, he makes out very interesting. What Mr. Lennox the Hater Lewis forgets to address, though, whenever I've called Lennox Lewis a hater, it's been based on what he's said. It's been catalogued over all these last few months. Many times he's come out. In fact, only recently, I've got a video coming out soon where Lennox Lewis says, oh yeah, it's a shame Joshua got beat, but he was being protected anyway. These are the things. You sit there and you suck Wilder off for ducking AJ and fighting Louis' old tees. You suck Fury off for dropping the belts for 3 years and coming back and fighting stiffs and getting a draw. But AJ, who was the one who was calling him out, looking for the fight. And for me, what defines a hater? When there is clear facts, as in the last year, Wilder's team sent no offers. Fury's team sent no offers. But yet, AJ's team have sent many offers, 40%. And to be honest, I reckon they would have gone to 45% if Wilder and Fury's team didn't even want to enter negotiations. And when that information's out there, and Lennox Lewis chooses to side with Fury and Wilder, that's what a hater is, no doubt. But back to the jealousy point. He tries to make out, oh well, yeah, my record's set in sand and I'm in the Hall of Fame. And you got to bear in mind, this response is very interesting that Lennox Lewis is deciding, or has decided, to respond to the hater narrative after Joshua was lost. I told you this already. My first thing, or one of the first things I said about Lennox Lewis was that he is feeling nice. Before, when he talked about Joshua, it was always snary and snidey. All of it, even in the Ruiz match. Before the Ruiz fight happened, he said, oh yeah, Ruiz is an alright fighter, but it's not the fight we want to see. Yeah, Joshua's too busy doing this, that, the other. Very snidey. And the reason that was the case was because, as I pointed out in a video I did before the Ruiz fight, Joshua, up to 23 fights, or 22 fights, whatever it was, he had one of the best, if not, put it this way, it was certainly a top 3 all-time resume to 22 fights, no doubt. No one in the history of boxing has a better resume than Joshua to 22 fights. Absolutely. No one does. Truly amazing what he's done. Most people, like Lennox, they were fighting stiffs at 22 fights. That's what we do know. Fighting nobodies. Never mind fighting world championships and unifying, etc., etc. And that's why Lennox Lewis was hating. Now he says in it, oh, how can I be jealous? I'm in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, and as I was saying, it's convenient. Now Joshua's lost to Ruiz. That's why he's coming out and addressing this now. Because he can kind of fall back on that. Oh yeah, look, my resume this, my resume that. But before, you got to bear in mind, before Joshua lost, he felt very insecure. He was sitting there thinking, oh gosh, there's a dude here, a very dangerous dude, an explosive, dangerous dude, who has completely slayed my record to 222 fights. Completely embarrassed me. Unified champion in 22 fights. Yeah? Fighting the best back to back to back, sending contracts out, etc., etc. Meanwhile, all them dudes fighting bums at 22 fights. Fact, no doubt. That's what made him feel insecure. Now, don't get me wrong. As I was saying, the reason he's come out now, the reason he's addressing it now is because Joshua was lost and he feels a lot better. And that's why, in the last few weeks, he's had more positive things to say about Joshua. Because now he doesn't feel threatened. He feels like, yes, now Joshua, and I've said this before, what haters do, they want Joshua to be more like them, to become more losers. Does that make sense? When Joshua was unbeaten, Lennox felt threatened. Now Joshua's got a loss, Lennox Lewis feels better. He feels like, yes, finally. Joshua is now more like me. As in, what do we know? Lennox Lewis had a loss on his record. So now he's happy to talk about it. Oh, yeah, how can I be a hater? Oh, I'm really happy for Josh. He can say that now because Joshua's got a loss on his record. So he doesn't feel intimidated. And it's funny enough, I actually called this. After the fight, I said, this dude is feeling nice. Now he feels like Joshua is on his level. Joshua is now not above him. Does that make sense? Because they've both lost. Before, his ass was twitching because he wasn't sure or not. He saw the greatness there and he wasn't sure or not if Joshua was going to completely eclipse his loss or completely eclipse his career. That's the fact of the matter. Anyway, next part. He says, the plays change, the game hasn't. Girls, sponsorship money have always been there during every era. As society evolves, each era learns how to perform the business side better. So the machine that you see has been done before. I've just been around long enough to see the plays come and go. I'm not sure what he's saying there. Is he saying that people are saying he's a hater because Joshua's making more money or something? I'm not sure what he's talking about there, but we'll keep it moving anyway. Next part. Who does it serve when the last undisputed black, yes, bring racing heavyweight champion is pitted against the next up-and-coming British black champion? I don't fall for the okie dokie, so I find it interesting when brothers don't see through the bull and even to do their own research to authenticate. The cloak of misdirection, pulling the wool over the eyes, is still an easy tactic to use. Divide and conquer. What would happen if answers I've been given to questions I'm asked about the heavyweights were taken seriously by boxers? What would the boxer gain? Does it elevate the boxer? Is the information something to think about for the next fight? Who gains from my critique? I'm not sure what this... Honestly, I'm not sure what this dude's on about. I'm really not. This dude seems... I ain't got a clue what he's talking about, but... yeah, I'm thinking about what to say. Ultimately, for me, he mentions here about divide and conquer and stuff, and in fact, the most thing I find interesting is, the cloak of misdirection, pulling the wool over the eyes is an easy tactic. And he also says, he talks about information and people not reading into things. But my issue with you has been, the information out there, I'm sorry, people can call me an AJ and Eddie Hearn cocksucker. What I feel I've proven over this last little while is, I'm objective. If I see things, I'm going to call it. If I don't, I'm not. I'm not going to make stuff up. I might have a bit of a laugh and throw a bit of a comedic spin on it, but ultimately, the facts remain the same. And my issue with Lennox Lewis is, he talks about being black and all this other BS. Bottom line is, bro, the information out there implies, or straight up tells you, Fury did not want the fight. Wilder did not want the fight. But you seem to be happy to suck them off. Look at their resumes. Who had Fury fought in 22 fights? Who had Wilder fought in 22 fights? Yeah? Simple as that. But yet they're 30, 40 fights in, got a draw against each other, but you want to bash AJ and talk about, oh yeah, he's happy being protected in the UK. Are you joking? You want to wonder why people call you a hater? Are you serious? You're actually wondering why people call you a hater? Oh, I'm not sure why people call me a hater, even though I said Joshua was happy. You know, it's one thing as well. People say, oh yeah, Eddie Hearn's protecting him. If you want to have that point of view, that's fair enough. But for then, fighter to fighter, bearing in mind Lennox Lewis is a man who always says, oh yeah, the fighter's not scared. Yeah, as a fight, there's no fighters that are scared to fight each other. That's what he always says. So, as a fighter to as a former fighter to a current up and coming fighter who possibly or probably even looks up to you, for Joshua to hear you saying, oh yeah, not only is Eddie Hearn protecting him, but oh yeah, Joshua's too happy being in the UK and being protected. That's muggy, that is, in my opinion. As an all-time great fighter, to look down, well, not look down, in fact, you're looking up, to look up to your superior in Joshua and sit there and say, oh yeah, he's happy being protected. That there is pure haterish. That's pure snidey. Especially when, fair enough, if Joshua's resume was like Wilder's 222 fights, if Lennox Lewis wanted to have that opinion, I wouldn't even make a video, because, you know what, it'd be kind of warranted. You know what, Joshua, he is kind of happy being in the UK fighting stiffs. You couldn't really argue it, but for Joshua to be fighting Martin and Takam and Dylan White and back to back to back to back to back. And not only that, not only has he actually fought them people back to back to back, also, when you add in the politics of the situation, as in sending offers to Wilder, this April just gone could have been Wilder, could have been Fury. Bear that in mind, by the way. If Fury or Wilder had accepted 45%, the fight would have happened. They said no meetings, no nothing. So when you add the resume to the politics and what's happened, and your response to that is, oh nah, Joshua was happy being protected in the UK, that there is a pure hater, I'm sorry. That there is the definition of a hater. You've got resume and politics, both implying Joshua's a real one. But yet you've got nothing but, oh yeah, and this is the other thing he said, oh yeah, Joshua, even though the facts were there, as in Joshua was the one sending offers. When was the last offer Fury sent? When was the last offer Wilder sent? And even though you knew that, your response was, oh yeah, listen, yeah, Joshua's seen Fury and Wilder boxing. He don't want no parts of them. Yeah, he's seen that Fury and Wilder can box. He doesn't want any parts of that. You muppet. How about you not a hater? That there's a hater comment. Knowing that fighters aren't, or from what your own words, knowing that fighters aren't scared of each other. Anyway, he goes on to say, every era has an influential black leader, and it would make sense to develop a relationship so that we can continue to strive and better our communities. In my era, take your pick, Muhammad Ali, Nelson Mandela. Instead of seeing the positives, the narrative is turned around to include negativity on a picture that has nothing to do with me. It's a shame that some people are so broken and unhappy that they transfer their thoughts and try to spin the narrative and try to say it's mine. It's time folks started looking at history and stopped being influenced by narratives that lead lambs to slaughter. Ultimately, the narrative owners are sitting back, laughing and enjoying their manipulative work. After my loss, I met with Mr. Mandela in South Africa, and the inspiration he left with me is still ingrained and helping me to serve my communities globally. 5. I'm a 3-time heavyweight world champion, last undisputed champion, living a purposeful worldly life, uniting and mentoring my communities from Jamaica, Canada, UK and the rest of the world. When you know why you were blessed with a role, you own it. So my story will always be intertwined with the 3 countries that helped create me. For some people this is too much to understand because their experience doesn't include multiple countries. On the world stage of boxing, it has been a privilege to have 3 countries to support me. It has been earned. Yeah, man, this guy, bottom line, man. He talks about Lennox is what you call a turncoat. I'm sorry. He's never really committed to any side. He's like to mug the UK fans off or take the UK fans' money when it's relevant. Oh yeah, Lennox Lewis is a turncoat. He never really committed to anything. In my opinion, you're one or the other here. There's no mix about it. Commit to something and ride with it. That's what Joshua's done. Yeah? Stuck with something and rode with it. This guy, Lennox Lewis, he wants to... There is, in this game, in my opinion, there is no best of all worlds. Yeah? That's because this Lennox Lewis is a typical on-the-fence type of dude. He wants to sit there and... He's a bit of a weirdo, if I'm honest. And for me, he's slimy because... As I've explained this whole video, his actions are slimy. That's it. And he talks about being this... people like Mandela and Ali. He talks about being this big, great guy... But go back and look at the comments he's made. Now, I'm not a historian, but from what I've seen of Ali didn't knock Lennox Lewis. I didn't see Ali knocking Lennox Lewis or Mike Tyson. If anything, he rose them up. Lennox Lewis weren't making them. Maybe after his loss he has, but even then, bottom line is, look at before Joshua's loss. What comments did Lennox Lewis make that Ali made? I know for a fact Ali used to talk Mike Tyson and them like that era up. Would talk them up. I remember there was a TV show where Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali were on a couch. And the presenter said to Ali, who would win in a fight versus you two? And Ali, at this point, he was obviously suffering with Alzheimer's, I think it is, whatever it is. That's what he was suffering with. But even then, he pointed at Mike Tyson and he made a real scared face. And I thought them sort of things there, yeah? And then obviously Mike Tyson said no way Ali would have beat me. But that there, Lennox Lewis ain't like that. He ain't got nothing good to say. Oh yeah, Joshua's seen Fury and Wilder. Yeah, he's seen them box. He don't want no parts of that. Yeah, Joshua's too happy being protected in the UK. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm sorry, man. The dude's a fake. You don't talk about, each era's got this, that, the other. You're not one of them. You're not an Ali. You're a snidey hater who now feels more secure about yourself because Joshua's lost. That's it. I'm sorry. Facts.